Mhm. Yep. Over here. All right. Hello.
Good evening.
How are y'all?
Doing just fantastic.
Good.
Doing great.
Good. All right. Module two, JavaScript. About to get real. A couple housekeeping things. Jonas will not be with us anymore. He's been doing OK Coders for like 6 years straight, so he needed a break. So we loved having him. We loved having him back, but for now he'll be hanging out with the dogs and the wife and stuff. So be good for him. So Derek and I will be here, trudging along and doing okay. And I think we did lose one student, Rachel, and I think that's it. based on who's in here now, yeah, we may have lost one more, but we'll find out. But that's okay. We still got a good class, and y'all get the pain of JavaScript. So it's gonna be good. How was the homework? A lot? Or your face says a lot.
It wasn't bad. Like I wasn't
Good.
sure how far to go exactly. There's a lot of stuff
Mhm.
underneath strings to do, and I wasn't sure if like we do everything under strings or what exactly. So, um, but I'm basically I'll just say I'm looking forward to this to kind of get a better handle on things. So.
Cool. Yeah, the variable string section is the longest section because it does a lot of that kind of introduction to JavaScript stuff as well. Um, so yeah, the idea was to do as much as you could of that section. The rest of it won't be as long. It'll be deeper, but not as long. So yeah, cool. Any questions before we dive in then? All good. Okay, let's do it. Move, move this. Oh no, my bookmark thing is in the way. Ah, okay, there we go. Move it over there. Okay. All right. I am going to turn that off and do this. Okay. So, if we remember the house, right? I can pull it up if you want me to, but remember the house, the structure of the house is our HTML, the paint is our CSS, and the, lamps and carpet and all that stuff. And then the plumbing, the electricity, all of that is our JavaScript, right? So that's the functionality of our website. It's what's going to make stuff happen when you click a button. It's what's going to move that data around, submit the form. Um, Basically anything except for some animations that CSS can do. It's going to be all of that. It's so powerful. Um, and the really cool thing I like about JavaScript itself is it can go anywhere. Your fridge could use JavaScript. Your Raspberry Pi can use JavaScript. Obviously, your websites, your mobile apps, your car, any like IoT or Internet of Things device. I mean, in JavaScript is very versatile and can be used anywhere. So it's a really cool language, in my opinion. Um, Python is really cool too, and a lot of times Python and JavaScript people will butt heads. But Python, I don't know, it's not as versatile, right? Because it's the whole like web-based language is what gives JavaScript its beauty because basically everything can connect to the web nowadays. Like I said, your fridge and all that stuff. Um, so it's really cool. Python's super good with AI stuff, data, all that good stuff. But for us, JavaScript, it's the way to go. So that's where we're gonna go. So this is JavaScript, but it's also basic programming, right? Like learning about logic and all of the things here. So what you learn here, variables and everything we're going to learn is the same in any other language you go to, meaning not the syntax will not be the same, but the concepts will be the same. You're going to have loops, you're going to have variables, you're going to have all of that stuff in Python or in C Sharp or in C++ or any of those languages. So the logic that we learn here is, I will say, is almost, well, it is more important than the syntax. However, since we are going to move on with JavaScript to do other things, the syntax is pretty important too. So just to know that. Um, yeah, high level, I think we're good. Let's get into it. All right, so variables. Variables are buckets. I always think of them like a bucket. So if you, for example, right here, this count, right? The word count is like a bucket that's going to hold this value of 0. Okay. Um, Variables are like the little buckets we put our data in to then move the data around. Okay. So we'll see later that you'll have like in a form, you'll have you'll put your name in or your date of birth or whatever it is. And then in JavaScript, we'll save that information into a variable. So it's like a little bucket that maybe we'll call date of birth or something. And we got it from the form in the HTML file, and then we stuck it in that bucket. So then we can go and say, hey, we want to make sure this person is over 18, or, check if their name is Elizabeth or something like that. So that's the whole point of a variable, is to hold that data so we can move it around or do something with it. Okay. We have a couple different ways we can declare variables. So declare is just saying, hey, I want to make this. We can use var, which is the very old way of doing it that nobody should ever do anymore. And the reason is because we're going to talk about scope in a minute. So var doesn't have any scope. It's globally scoped, which means it can be accessed from anywhere in your JavaScript. Okay. And we need things in scope so that way they're protected, kind of. And we'll get deeper into that. But just know that var, if you use var like here with old, it says don't use this. Because that old variable is going to be accessed by everything. Okay. So we don't want to do that. And again, we'll get more into that in a little bit. What we do want to use is either let or const. Okay. Const, think of constant, like it's always going to be what you tell it it's going to be. It's not going to change. So const is constant, never changing, cannot be reassigned. Okay. So, and since if you, what's a good, let's say that you have specific colors you want to use in your website, and you know that the hex value is not going to change for those colors, then you could make them a const, because you know later on in your JavaScript, you're not going to change the value of that variable. Okay. When I say value, I'm talking about what's on the right side of the equals. So in this case, Alice, and then name would be the variable name, right? So the value of the name of the variable name is Alice. Okay. Value. Cool. Okay. And the other one is let. So let is basically if it can be reassigned. So if you have, let's say you have a variable total, total. So let's say it's like a calculator. You have a variable total. You know that as you begin to add things or subtract things or whatever, that total is going to change. So you would want to make that variable name of total. Let's say this was total. You would want to make it a let, because it's going to change. Okay. So that's the big things. Let, if it's going to change, const if it's not. Default to const, because just in case, like in the beginning, you might think, I'm not sure if I want this to change. It's easier to start as const, and then if you go to reassign it, it'll give you an error and say, hey, you can't do that. And then you can go, oh, okay, I meant to make it a let or whatever. Okay. And we'll get plenty of practice with this, so don't worry. It's confusing. Okay, questions on that before I move on? Clear, cool. Okay. All right. Data types. Data types are fun. So there are five primitive data types. So if we look at these, I guess I got a list here. The values, basically each variable can have a data type. And it's going to be what the data type of the value is, right? So a string is just text wrapped in quotes. So it's a sentence, basically a word or a sentence. It could include numbers as well, but if they're inside the quotes, then it's a string. Okay. This will matter later on down the line. Data types in general will matter due to like validations and things. So if you are expecting the user to put in their name and they put in a bunch of numbers, then you could go, oh, okay, I expected a string, which would be their name would be a string. And And so you could give them an error and say, hey, your name can't be a bunch of numbers or whatever. And vice versa, if you're expecting like a date of birth, a date of birth is kind of tricky, but say you're expecting a number like an age, and they put in Taco Bell, then you could go, oh, well, that's a string. Uh, I need the number of your age. So number is another one. Number can be a whole number or an integer, and it could also be a floating point number. Um, in other languages, they're typically broken up. There would be two different data types. JavaScript is very loosey-goosey and is like, hey, that's cool. I don't care. So it can be a decimal number or a whole number. Yeah. Boolean, true or false, right? 0 or 1. Like that's all Boolean is. It's like the basic computer, like communication model, right? So true or false. And when you write these, you'll think, oh, I'm writing a string, but if you don't enclose it in quotes, it's not a string. So it will be true or false. Undefined and null are a little different. What undefined means is that it's not defined. Okay. So it's not that it's empty. It's not like an empty string or a zero or other things we'll learn down the way. It's literally not defined. And so you can see right here with data that they just put the variable name data and they did not put an equal sign with anything on the other side of it. So it's declared, you've said, okay, there's gonna be a variable named data, but it's not defined because you didn't give it any value. Even a blank value, you didn't give anything. Okay. And this is okay. You're going to do this sometimes. But just know that means it's undefined. And then null means that it is intentionally empty. So it's not an empty string. It's not a zero. It's just null. So it's a variable sitting there that you have said, okay, this is intentionally empty. Okay. I don't think I've really declared a variable null very often. Maybe get into React you would with state variables, but typically when you declare a variable, you're gonna have an initial value to it, especially in the beginning. So types are very important. Like I said, they will become way more important down the road when we get into React and Next.js, because you'll hear about this thing called TypeScript, and we won't get into that right now. But just know that eventually this will matter. In the beginning, it's kind of like that's cool to know, but we'll get into it. Okay. Questions on that? Okay. All right. This is the fun stuff. So a lot of the reason that more traditional programmers don't like JavaScript is because of the loosey-goosiness of it. In C++ and like compiled languages, which we'll talk about that in a second, they are very strict about types and like putting types together and stuff. And in JavaScript, they have this thing called type coercion, which makes it kind of funky. So, just a side note, there's two different types of languages. There's compiled and there's interpreted. JavaScript is an interpreted language, which means that it doesn't get checked until it's ran. So as you're writing your code, like errors aren't going to pop up while you're writing it. They're only going to pop up once you actually open it in the browser, okay, or wherever you're running it at. Compiled languages, they compile beforehand, so C# and C++ and things like that. And so they find the errors before it's ever ran in the program. So it's kind of the two differences there. There will not be a quiz on that, I don't think. Okay. All right, so type coercion, what it means is that if you put certain types together, it coerces one of the other into the other type. Okay. And that sounds weird. But what it basically means is right here, if you see that we have hello in a string, right? It's got the quotes. I'm quoting like y'all can see me. I turned my camera off. Let me turn it back on. Okay. In the quotes. Okay. And then you have 42, the number, right? So this is a string. 42 is a number because it's not in quotes. Okay. But what this gives you is the string. You can see that. Hello 42. Okay. So even though 42 was a number, since the string is there, the string coerced it into being a string. Okay. And so it became hello 42. So if you were messing with this and you expected 42 to be a number, it's not going to be a number anymore because it got coerced. So that is something to look at. And then even more fun is this: if you have the string 3 and the number 4 and you add them together, it becomes the string 34 instead of 7, which you would expect if you're adding 3 and 4. Okay. So in this case, let's say you were making a calculator app and you weren't checking the types of the numbers coming in, and your user put in a string 3 and then a number 4, your calculator is going to give them, if you haven't done any other checks on it, like a string 34, and they're going to be like, no, 3 plus 4 is 7. This thing's broken, right? So this is where types really kind of come in and matter. Does that make sense? It's a little weird, right? Okay, yeah. So comparisons. So there's, whenever you have a single equal sign, that's an assignment operator, okay? And so that means that you are assigning this value to this variable, okay? That's a single equals. If you have two equals, 2 and 3 equals are comparison operators. 2 equals does not check the type, okay? So it would say string 5 equals number 5 is true because they're both 5. It doesn't care that it's a string and that it's a number. It's just looking at strictly the value of it. Okay. Triple equals does check the type. So if you have string 5 and number 5, it's going to say, no, these are not equal. Okay. So you always want to default to the triple equals. There are sometimes, I think maybe like, I always try to count them up. There's like 2 in my career that I've actually wanted to do a double equals instead of a triple equals. And it probably was just poor programming on my part. But it worked out, at least so far. But most of the time, like 99% of the time, you're going to want to do triple equals when you're comparing something. Okay. So the biggest mistake you'll make in the beginning is you'll try to do 5 equals 5 with the single equals because it's just weird to use more than one. And you'll be like, what is it doing? So just remember, single is assignment, triple is comparison. There is also like greater than and equals and less than and equals and not equals, but we'll get into those later. Same rules apply. Yeah. Okay. Question on that? Good. Okay. Definitely jump in if you have any questions. I'm trying to go slow on purpose. So if I'm going too slow, though, I can speed up. We can get this real quick. Okay. Let's see. All right. String methods. You're going to hear the word methods and you're going to hear the word functions a lot. Those are the same thing. Okay. Methods is a function on a class. You don't need to know that right now, but just know that when somebody says methods, somebody says functions, they're the same thing. It just depends on where they are, but they do the exact same thing. Okay. And we'll learn about functions next week, I think. But that was a big thing in the beginning that confused me because I was like, why are you talking about methods? I thought we're talking about functions. Same thing. Okay. So this is called string methods because they are methods on strings. Okay. So there's a class called strings. This is deeper than you need to go, but there's a class called strings that has a bunch of these methods already built into it. So think about Bootstrap, how it's got all the classes built in. Sorry. Classes when I'm talking about Bootstrap are different than classes when we're talking about JavaScript. Okay. There's a major separation there, just so you know. But in a big thought, Bootstrap brought us a lot of things in that we could just automatically use, right? That we didn't have to build. Like we could use all those styles that Bootstrap just brought in. That's what methods do for us in JavaScript. They're these built-in functions that we can just use based on the class that we're using, which in this case is a string class. Okay. So that's the big picture there. They're just things that are built that we can bring in. Okay. Hope I didn't add any confusion on that one. Okay. Okay, so cool. So on a string, so we have this string hello world that has a bunch of space in the front and behind it. And spaces are a big deal. Remember in the beginning I mentioned when you're naming files, you don't want to put spaces. You want to use either like hyphens or underscores. This is why. So if you have this string with hello world spaces, if you just go to print this or log it in your console, you just want to see it, you're going to see it with all of these spaces. So if your user puts their name in and they put a bunch of spaces before and after their name, you're going to store that name with all those spaces. So if you go to say, hello, whoever, it's going to have all the spaces in there and it's going to look awful on your screen and you're not going to know that it has the spaces, so it's going to mess everything up. So what you can do is you can use the .trim method on the variable, right? And so this is the variable text, right? So the bucket text right now is holding this, right? This whole string is inside this text variable, right? And so we're saying, hey, I want to use this method on this variable, okay? And so what this does, the trim method gets rid of all the white space before and after any words that are in there, okay? Now, you don't need to know right now how it does that. You just need to know that it is a method that you can use on a string. Okay. So again, we have that bucket text and it's a string and we can do stuff to it, right? And so by removing that white space with this .trim method, we then get hello world with no space on it, front and back. Make sense? Cool. Okay. Cool. And there's a bunch of other ones that you can use. We won't go super deep into it, but so this dot, we call this dot notation. Whenever you say a variable with dot after it, we're going to use this a lot more as we go on. But just know that when you hear it, it's called dot notation. Cool. So to change case, we have this dot to lowercase. So it's going to take what's inside our bucket, right? Our little variable bucket, and it's going to make everything lowercase. Notice also that it has the space there, right? Because we didn't do .trim here, we just did it up here on this guy. So it doesn't, like this is not changing text. It's just making this, which that sounds confusing, but we'll get to that. But yeah, just know that there's a bunch of methods you can use. Like dot length is a big one. That's going to give you how long is that text. And this includes, should include spaces. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so there's 10 letters, but 15 total because of those spaces, right? That's why we get 15 here on the length. All right. So far, so good?
Yep.
All right, cool. All right, so again, this is called dot notation. As a there's a inverse, might be an inverse. It's a different way of accessing something. called bracket notation, and that's what this is. So in this case, we're trying to access a character in that string, right? So remember, text right now is currently holding this hello world string, right, with the blanks. And so if we say text at position 0, so bracket notation 0, then we're going to get whatever character is at the very beginning of this string, okay? Which in this case is blank, right? So you always start at 0 when you're counting in programming. It's always 0 to whatever. So 0 is the very first place, okay? And so again, it would be blank because we didn't trim this. So we're getting blank. So a different way to do that is they have this .char at method, which is character at. So it's character at position 2, which would be the third character in, right? Because we're counting from 0. So we'd have 0, 1, and then 2. And that's going to give us the H. Okay. Anybody's minds blown yet? Sticking in there? Okay. Cool. We're going to get to arrays eventually next week, maybe. They act just like strings. So it's in your mind, just kind of put that back there somewhere. Arrays and strings are very, very similar in that you can access their characters with bracket notation and that they have methods on them very similar to strings. Cool. Some other ones, we won't dive too much into these yet, but you can find the index of like an entire word, which is going to give you the space that it starts. So in this case, world would be at the 8th space. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, see, I started at 1. You got to start at 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's where it starts, is at 8. Okay. If you do an index of and it doesn't find it, then it gives you a -1. I don't know why, but that's what it does. So knowing that is a nice way to say, hey, I want to make sure this thing's not in my string. So search for this thing. And if it's not -1, then you know it is in your string. So you can go, okay, I need to remove it or whatever. So it's a good way to do that. You can slice a string by giving it the positions. Is there a question?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the index of
Hmm?
the 8 for world, what
Mhm.
does that mean exactly?
So that's the position where world starts in the string.
Okay.
So looking for that W. So if we go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's where that
Okay.
starts. Make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yep.
Related to that, I have a question actually too. On the XYZ one where it said, there's nothing there. What if the
Mhm.
XYZ, what if it was like XRD or something? Like the first letter didn't exist, but maybe the second letter did. Does it just throw the whole thing out because it doesn't match that string exactly, or does it just, skip the first one and then go to the second one?
That's a great question. I do not know. We can find out though. Um, let's bring up trusty terminal here. Will it work in my terminal? I think I have to do a REPL. Let me see. Let me see. I think it'll let me do it here. Actually, we'll just ask Claude real quick. We're gonna get into the terminal and stuff here in a minute, or here in a little bit, but let's ask Claude the chat. Okay, if I were to run this, and the string contained X Barbie, would it return -1 or the index of X? Okay, so it matches the exact substring, so it would give you -1.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yep, it's a great question. Cool. Okay. So slice is the index where it starts and then the index where it ends, not inclusive, I think. So it's going to give you back whatever is between those. So in this case, 2 and 7, we would have 0, 1, 2. So we're going to start at the H and then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's going to give us hello, not including that last blank. So it's the beginning position and then the ending position inclusive. Okay. And you'll hear inclusive and exclusive on a bunch of different things as we go. All right. And then there's also includes, which is similar to index of, except for it just tells you if it's actually there or not. So this is doing it just directly on the string hello. Is ELL in it? Yes, it is. Okay, true. Starts with, ends with, same kind of concept. Okay.
Actually, I
kind
have
of
a quick question.
Yeah.
Are those sensitive? So if you had capital HE, would it still be true for the starts with, or would it be false?
I want to say false. I think it is case sensitive, but let's go to our trusty
Yeah.
Claude and ask him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's case sensitive,
Okay.
but it also does.
Yep. Case sensitive it is.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Okay, so when I was saying earlier that I use the word returns quite a bit. When we get into functions and methods, returns is what, after everything is done within the function, what it sends back to us. Okay. And we'll get way deeper into that as we get into functions. But I mention it because here it says that strings methods return new strings, which means, and it says they don't change the original. Okay. And so here, if we were to say text trim hello world, and then we logged text afterward, it's going to say hello world with all the spaces in it because it didn't change what text was. It just told us what this would be. Okay. So in functions, we would return that to a new variable is what we would have to do. And we'll get way into that. But we would do like let trim text or whatever you want to name that function equals text dot trim. And then we would get back this. So then when we look at the new variable we just named, we would have this instead of this. Okay. If that doesn't make 100% sense right now, that's okay. We'll get way into that. But just so you know, it does not change the original. It returns a new string in this case. Okay. And again, we'll get into that, so don't worry too much. Okay. We'll get into that a little bit too. So for numbers, similar kind of thing. It has its own methods. The numbers class does. So if we look at, so our variable is price, right? So that's our bucket that's holding 4.5 in this case. If we do the toFixed method on it and give it a number, that's how many decimal positions it's going to have. Okay, so we're saying we want you to have 2. So instead of 4.5, we're going to see 4.50. Okay. And this is super helpful if you have a uh, like a shop or something where you want to display this costs $4.50 instead of this costs 4.5, right? Because that looks weird. And it's very common. I mean, even when I build stuff, I'll be like, oh man, I forgot to do the two fixed and it looks funky and you gotta fix it. There's some ways to convert strings into numbers. So this would be helpful, like in the case where if our user puts in a string 4 and we want, let's say we wanted a 4 plus 2 together, and they put in a string 4, we could do a parse int on that to change that string 4 into a number 4 before we did the addition. Okay. Same with float. So float again is the decimal number. It's a floating point number. Same deal there. And then there's the actual number class that would change it into a number as well. So kind of three ways to do the same thing. You'll notice this number has a capital N on it. The rest of the parse and stuff do not. Variable name, or sorry, method names and function names and variable names should not start with a capital letter. Always a letter, but never a capital letter. The capital letter is saved for classes in JavaScript. And we're not going to get super deep into classes, but we'll talk about it in a little bit. But know if you see one, that's a class, right? And so this is doing basically the same thing as parse int, just changing it from a string to a number. Okay. You'll see parse int, I think, a lot more than you would see it done this way, but just so you're aware. There's a super handy little isNaN method, and nan stands for not a number. So this is a really good way to check if something is not a number. So you can put a string in there and it's going to give you true because it is not a number, right? If you put a number in there, it's going to give you false because it is a number. Okay. So this is not a number. So really helpful with your validations to make sure that it, is or is not a number depending on what you're expecting. Okay. Throughout this module, we're going to do an expense tracker. That's what we're going to try to build. And then also in module 3, we're going to expand on it and have a backend and a database and all sorts of fun stuff. So Saturday, we'll go into that. Saturdays are going to be a lot more of like initially like me coding and you guys watching and then you guys trying to like do that, a lot less of go away, do your thing, come back. Okay. Because JavaScript is not easy. It is when it clicks, it's awesome, but it's not super easy to get there. But just for kind of an overview, we'll have some expenses that we'll make. So we'll have variables for those. And yeah, initially we'll just kind of set that up and then we'll write functions and have it do a bunch of cool stuff. A couple of common mistakes. If it's a const, remember const doesn't change. Let does. So if you try to reassign so this variable x is 5 initially, and then if later on you said x equals 6, then it should give you an error saying you can't reassign that. That's a const. Okay. Missing parentheses. So anytime you call, we'll get into that later too, but whenever you use a function or method, you have to have parentheses at the end of it, because that's the syntax that it is. So if you don't have those, like on this text trim, it's not going to trim the text. You should get an error. More about that in a minute. This is similar to what I was saying about the string methods. What is a string method? If we call this on a string, but we don't save it to a new variable, it's just going to do it, whatever the function was, and then just disappear because we didn't save it. So we would want to have a new variable, in this case upper, and then this whatever this does, so going to uppercase it, we'll return it to this new variable. So then when we look at that, we'll see the uppercased version of the old variable. Okay. Those are just some common things that you'll hit along the way. Okay. All right. Did that in 40 minutes. So now I'm going to do some coding so you can see it. This will be way better. So let me get rid of my superhero business here. Get this over here. All right. So this, let me see if I have it up here. Okay. So this is our basic page, right? That we're used to seeing. I do have Bootstrap thrown on here already. Just got a couple columns. This doesn't have any JavaScript except for the Bootstrap JavaScript. So let me see if I can do this like this. This guy over there. Okay. All right, so basic HTML page, we're used to seeing this, right? We got our head, we got our Bootstrap here brought in. Here's our body, just our regular Bootstrap container, JavaScript, or JavaScript practice, blah, blah. This script tag is the Bootstrap script tag. That's hard to say. Goodness. So no JavaScript from us yet, right? So to bring in JavaScript, first you need a JavaScript file. Well, two ways, sorry. You can bring in JavaScript directly into your HTML through in between script tags. So we could do just scripts like this. Let me just make a bunch of room. I'm just making room so we can see. There's no need to actually do this. Oh, other way. So if we had two script tags, then we can, when the page loads, it's going to trigger this script. Okay. So if I just did, I'm just going to do an alert. So alert, this is a built-in method. You can see it already did it. For the browser API, which we'll get into APIs later, application programming interface. But this is going to trigger as soon as the page loads. So if we stop it and reload, it's going to trigger this alert, right? It's not super often you would do this in your file, in your HTML, because normally your script's going to be pretty long. So the better way to do it would be just like they did it here with the Bootstrap, except for it's going to be to our script file. Okay. So I'm going to go over here and just next to your HTML, just like you would your style CSS, you're going to make a JavaScript file. And so we'll just call it, I'm just going to call it index.js, JS being JavaScript. You'll see it as script.js, app.js, main.js. There's a bunch of different kind of conventions to do it. It doesn't really matter, just whoever if you're working at a company, they're going to have a way to do it. What's important is that you're referencing that file from your HTML. So index.js, okay. And down in my script here, let me get rid of this guy. You're still going to have an open and close script tag. There's just not going to be anything in it. But in your opening tag, you're going to do your source equals, and then this would be index.js, right? So again, instead of doing the source like they have here, this big old deal, we're just doing it the path to our JavaScript. So if you had like a scripts folder, you would want to make sure that that path is correct to get to that JavaScript file. Okay, just like your style.css file. Okay. Do make sure that this is the last script file in your page, because again, everything goes from top to bottom, right? So you want whatever you're doing to override whatever is above it. Okay, so again, just like our styles.css, we want below our Bootstrap stuff in the head. Same concept. Good. Cool. Okay. All right, cool. So Get rid of that. So our alert's gone. Fantastic. Okay, so now that we have that, let me make this bigger. So this file will now should now trigger upon load, upon the page loading. So if we do our alert in here, then there you go. Same thing, right? So we know that our page is connected. And you can do a bunch more with the alert, like you can make it prettier and do other things, but this is just a basic browser alert. All right, good. Everybody tracking on that so far? Good. Okay. So let's say that we want to, I don't know, let's click this box, right? This one box. And when we click the box, an alert pops up. Okay. So in order to do that, we need to be able to access this box, this one box, right? Which is this div here. Okay. I'm going to make this a little smaller and this a little bigger. Okay. So in order to access something, we need, there's three different ways you can access an element, right? So we're talking about HTML elements. You can access it by its element name, so div. That's going to access every div. So just like in CSS, if we did div, it's going to be every one of them. You can do an ID, which is probably the most common. And then in forms, you can do their name. You can access it by name. We'll do that in a minute. So in this case, I'm just going to give this an ID and call it box1. Box1. Notice that I am not putting a space, right? No spaces. Because if there's a space there, then it's going to try to find it and say, there's a space. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so ID box1. So in order to access this from our JavaScript, we are going to use a couple methods on the DOM. Okay, so the DOM is a whole thing. DOM stands for Document Object Model. And the DOM is, if we look at our inspection elements here, this thing, this is our DOM, okay? You can hear it says DOM breakpoints. So Document Object Model is what it stands for. But it's basically your page, okay? And the page is broken down into a tree, which is all these elements and stuff. And that's what makes the DOM. So that's important to know because the document, the DOM, is what we're going to access to get access to all the elements. Okay, so right over here, we can do document, which is doing there. So that's we're accessing the document or the DOM, and we're going to get an element by the ID. Okay, and so document is what we're getting. We're looking at the DOM, right? The document, and we want to get an element by a specific ID. Okay. So get element by ID is a method or a function on the DOM, right? It's a built-in method on the DOM. And here we're going to tell it what ID we want to get. And the ID is a string, and it's going to be box1, box-1. Okay. Put that in there. Now, just by calling this, not calling it, by invoking this function, this method, it's going to get this, but it's not going to do anything with it because we need to store this in a variable so then we can do something with it. Okay. And so I'm going to make it a const and I'm going to call it, I'm just going to call it box1 and I'm going to use camel case in this case. And in JavaScript, a lot of times you'll use camel case instead of, this is kebab case instead of kebab case, even though kebab case is way more fun to say. But we'll use camel case. So, and then we're going to put our semicolon. JavaScript is very, like I said, kind of loosey-goosey. Semicolon is not required. Like it doesn't care. It used probably back in the day it cared, and it probably came from other languages. It is good visually for us to be able to see, okay, this is where this line ends, but it doesn't care. Like you could leave it off. It also doesn't care if you like broke this out into 7 lines or if you wrote all your JavaScript on one line across the entire page. It doesn't care. Python cares. JavaScript doesn't care. So for your readability, you should care. Even though it doesn't care, you should care. Because it would be if it's sloppy, it's very difficult for you and then future developers to read. Okay. Cool. So again, what we're doing here is we're accessing the document, so the DOM, and we are using a method that the DOM has, which you may have noticed. Let me do this again. If you hit document and then dot, it's giving you a bunch of stuff. Okay. All these little symbols have different meanings. So in this case, like I think these are properties. So if we go to get element by ID down here, so these purple ones mean that they're methods, right? That they're functions on the document, on that class. These blue ones I think are properties. So they're different things, but it is helpful. Like if you were like, well, I know I want to get the element, but I don't know how to do it. So you just kind of like start typing get element. Okay, cool. I have 5 ways I could get an element, and then can kind of figure out which one you need to do. So just know that dot is in VS Code is very helpful. Okay. All right. Cool. So we're getting the element by the ID box1, and we are saving it to this variable box1. Okay. So now that we have it in this variable, we can then do something to it. First thing I always want to do is look at it and say, well, what is this? Like, what's the value of it? What are you? Easiest way to do it is what's called a console.log. So just do console.log and then put your variable name inside there. So box1. And what I like to do, and this does vary depending on the developer you're talking to, I like to put a little label in front of it so I know what I'm looking at when I'm looking at my console. Okay. And so I'll just put a couple quotes and just put whatever, like this is box1, or just put box1 or whatever. This is just a little label that you'll see, and I'll show you in just a second. So you can know what you're looking at. Because if you just put box1 by itself like this, it's just going to show you what box1 is, which it may be like a number 3. And you're going to be like, well, what is number 3? What does that reference? But if you put a little label in front of it, then you're going to go, okay, that's what I'm looking at. So I'll just put this as box1. Okay, so you may ask, well, what the heck is the console? You may have noticed over here in our browser, there's a console button, right? So this is our console. So whenever we do a console.log, we are logging to the console. So you can see here, this is box1. So this is what I have here, right? So it's logging to the console. The console is like the document. So here we have the document for the DOM. Here we have the console. So it's another, I can't think of the word. Another thing that we have access to that has methods on it that we can do stuff to. So there's a lot of things on console besides .log that you can do, but console.log is by far one of the most frequently used debugging tools that there are. You will use it all the time. I use it all the time. It's a good thing. Okay. Does that make sense? Did I lose anybody? Still good? Okay. All right, cool. So let me do, just to show you, I'm going to make another variable down here. I'm going to call it, let's see, I am not defined. Okay. Now, if I console log this, oh, I think it's already mad at me. I wonder if it's gotta be a let. Probably gotta be a let. Yep. Okay, so you see it would not let me do a const for a variable that was not defined because we can't change it later, right? So we could have never defined it. So it was like, oh no, we ain't letting that happen. I'll show you again. See, the console threw this error up right here and said you didn't initialize the variable. You didn't give it any value, and you can't change it because it's a const. So this is an error. You got to fix it. Good. Okay. So if I change to a let, it knows, okay, I can change it down the road. Now, if we console log it, so I am not defined, then you can see already, I'm going to put my little tag in front of it. This will be undefined. Okay. Oop. All right, so cool. So you can see that I've declared it here, but I didn't define it, right? And that's exactly what it gave us back is undefined because it was never defined. So I just wanted to show you that to show you what would be in there if you weren't to actually give it any value. Okay. The reason box one is defined is because we gave it something, right? Hope that makes sense. Cool. Okay, so let's quickly then make our box one do something. So we know over here that our box one is giving us back this div, right? This whole element. So that's going to match up to this element right here. So div with hashtag box one, class column 12, blah, blah, blah. That matches this, right? Very similar. It just uses the hashtag and the dot instead of the words ID and class. Everybody see that? Pretty good. Okay. So on this element, we then, let's say we want to change the background color. What we can do, since now we have access to it with this box one, I'm going to change this name to box one element, just so we know that it's the actual element. And so now you can see that I got an error because box one is not defined. And I'm trying to log box one, but I changed the name of it, so it's not there anymore. So I can update this and this, and then it'll be happy again. And again, note that this is just a label, right? This could say Taco Bell, this could say anything you want. This is just a label to tell you what that element is, okay? Okay, so real quick, we're gonna then take our box one element and we're gonna change a property on it. In this case, we're gonna change the style and we're gonna change the background color. Let's go background color. And we're gonna make it purple. Oops. Okay. Okay. So it's purple, right? So we did that with JavaScript, not with CSS, JavaScript. So I'll quickly go back over that. So we got access to the element from the DOM, right? So again, back here, we had an ID of box one for this div. My vacuum just started. And we got the element from the document. Sorry, let me turn my vacuum off. Stop it. Why? Okay. Her name is Bridget, by the way. We've named her. Anyway, okay. So we got the element in our box one element, and then we took that element and we were able to change the properties on it, right? In this case, the property was style, and we were able to give it a background color style of purple. Okay. This is going to be very, what's the word? It's what we're going to do, right? We're going to be grabbing elements, changing their, maybe not changing their style so much. I mean, like, you can do some fun stuff with that, but more like we're going to make actions happen. So we're going to get like all the info from a form, and we're going to like check how old they are, add up their shopping cart, do all sorts of stuff. But it's all going to be done like this, by grabbing things on the DOM, manipulating the data, sending it back, showing stuff, and all of that, all that fun stuff. So I know we're over by a minute, but I hope this little like nugget of a weird purple background like sparked that curiosity, of like you can do so much cool stuff. So that's it. Questions? All good? Are you excited? No? Yeah, maybe a little. Okay.
Yeah, looking forward to digging into this a little bit more.
Sweet. Yeah. It's gonna be good. I love it. Okay. I will. Oh, we're gonna do the debug and the read thing like we've been doing, so I'll put that out here in a minute. And then yeah, Saturday we'll just build a lot more stuff and get going. So yeah, reach out in between then if you have any questions or whatever. And other than that, I'll see you Saturday, I guess.
Thank you.
Ryan?
Thank
Yep.
you.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Later.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.